G'day everyone and welcome to the Inside Rugby preview show for the game between France and England. That's going to be the second game of the final round of this year's Six Nations competition. The game will take place in France on Saturday, and I'm going to go through the team selections and my predictions in this video.
Delby Thomas, Edwards to Barry John, Hall, John Dawes, again Williams in the line, he's over the 25, into John Taylor, what a magnificent move!
G'day everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're a first time viewer of Inside Rugby here with Mark, welcome, it's great to have you here, and if you think I earn your subscription, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also give this video a thumbs up if you like it as well. If you're a regular watcher of my videos, thank you very much for coming back. It's great to have you here. I look forward to reading everybody's comments about this particular video and this great game that's coming up on Saturday between France and England. And what a great game it's going to be. Why don't we get into having a look at the team selections, some interesting ones there, and then I'll start talking about my prediction for this particular game. Okay, let's get into the French team first, and we're going to start off in the forwards, and we're going to have a look at their front row in particular. Cyril Baille is one of the props, Antonio is the other props, and Marchand stays in at hooker. So an interesting front row. They're going to have a big job up against the English front row, and I think this is going to be a very important aspect of the game. Last weekend we saw Antonio having a very big game against Wales, and he was very good. But the English did very well against the Irish as well. So expect the front row battle to be very intense in this game. And then moving on to the locks for France in this game, Flamand and Mifu. Saw Mifu last weekend for the first time I'd ever watched him play. Thought he had a hell of a good game against Wales, and expecting him to turn up against England this week as well. Then looking at the back three and the forwards for France, and I think this is where they might have a bit of an advantage over England this weekend. We've got Crew, Olivon and Aldrit. Aldrit back from that injury last week, of course, and I think he'll be better for that run last weekend against Wales. Expect him to be a little bit fitter this weekend and ready to go against England. So Gregory Aldrit back in the team and will be the captain of this French team this weekend. So that's the starting eight for France in this game. Immense game last weekend from these guys. Expect them to turn up and want to do a big performance in front of their home crowd in France this weekend. And now turning to the French reserves, who did such a fantastic job, I thought, against Wales, and Fabien Galtier has selected the same guys to come out again this weekend against England, and I think this might be one of the very key factors in this game. So we've got Malvaka on the bench to come on, obviously as the hooker, but he's brilliant around the field. We've got the two Taiafanua brothers who will come on. Roman, of course, last weekend scored that great try against Wales. We've also got Roumat, and we've got Boudin coming on as well. Impressed me the most last weekend. He scored that try in the second half against Wales, and that was Henri Colombi. And what a brute of a guy he was, and he played a fantastic role when he came on for France in that cameo performance, as I said, scoring that try in the second half. So expect these French forward reserves to do a big job against England this weekend, and I'm picking that as going to be one of the areas where France is going to have it over England this weekend. Okay, moving on to the French backline now, and let's have a look at who's going to be starting. And we start off with their number 9, and didn't he have a fantastic weekend last weekend? And I'm talking about Ligarec, and what a fantastic pass that was as well. It's been watched millions of times online, but he had a brilliant game, I thought, around the field for France. He was great on distribution. He scored that great try, but he was also very good at getting the French backline away, and that's exactly what they've been missing from Lucu when Lucu was starting in this French team. So La Grec really gets my thumbs up for starting again this weekend. The experiment of putting Thomas Ramos at first 5 was fantastic by Fabien Galtier. It worked. I'd been calling for it, and it just showed how brilliant he is. He was absolutely brilliant from the kicking tee as well. He got 8 out of 9 last weekend. And with Roman Intermac not far away for starting for France, this is a great opportunity for Ramos to, I guess, consolidate his position for now at number 10. I'm sure he'll be moving back to fullback when Intermac comes back into this team. Outside of him, we had Di Porteri, who played very well as well, I thought, in the second 5'8" position. And again, I think a lot of this had to do with the way that Ramos was playing inside of him. It gave Di Porteri a lot of freedom and opportunity when it came to putting France out, or getting the ball out wide for France. And I think that's something we're going to see more of this weekend. Gael Ficou has been playing really well at outside centre for France. He comes in again this weekend in the number 13 jersey, and expect him to have another big game. I think he's playing very well in this year's Six Nations competition. And then outside on the wings, we've got Biarri and we've got Damien Penaud. And boy, two fantastic wingers who can score tries from anywhere in the field. So expect them to have big games as well. And then we've got Barry at fullback. Last weekend, I was impressed with him. I thought he did a good job indeed against Wales, and expect him to be a little bit more prevalent in attack this weekend. We saw a lot of him doing defensive work last weekend, but when the second half got underway, he started to show his running talent a little bit more. I, for one, would like to see a little bit more of that from Barry in this particular game. That's the French starting backs for this game, and they've only got two reserves on the bench in the back line, and that's Luku and Mofana, as we saw last week. And I'm glad Luku's on the bench because he does bring something a little bit more energised when he comes on, but it's good having La Greek there for the majority of the game, and I think that's helping this French team a lot. Mofana's a good utility back, can come on and play in a number of different positions. So if France don't get any injuries in that first half in the back line, expect to see Mofana come on at some stage in the second half. So that's the French team that's going to be taking on this English team. I'm going to have a look at the English team now, and then I will give you my prediction. Okay, starting off with the English forwards, and in the front row, Genge, George and Cole. And as I said, this is going to be an instrumental battle for England up front against this French front three. The French front three, Baye and Antonio, of course, brings so much experience, but also weight, technical skill and know-how. And I think Genge and George and Cole are really going to be put to the test here. It's going to be a really interesting battle between the two front rows. And then moving on to the locks for England, we've got Itoje and Martin. And didn't Martin play well again off in the starting lineup last weekend? And he deserves to be there again this week. He's brought an immense set of power and skill set to this tight five for England, and I think it's one of the master strokes from Steve Borwick is getting Martin on there and starting into the back three of the forwards. And I think this is going to be a pivotal part of the game, and I think with Chisholm, Underhill and Earl, they've got a good opportunity of being able to take it to France. But I think this is where the battle could be won and lost in the weekend, is this tight three at the back. And Underhill's been playing exceptionally well so far in the tournament. Earl, of course, won in man of the match and also scored a try or two. And Chisholm's been playing very well indeed. He got a big knock last weekend. I thought he was going to have to go off the field, but he stayed on and he performed very, very well for England against that Irish team. So a big set of forwards for England. Are they going to have it over the French? I think they might do well in the first 40 or 50 minutes, but when that French reserve pack comes on, I think that's when the game could change up. So talking about reserves in the forwards, let's look at what the English reserve bench looks like in the forwards for this game. So having a look at the forward reserves for England for this game, we've got Dan, Marler and Stewart, Root and Dombrant. So a 5-3 split here for Steve Borthwick this weekend. It's an interesting one because France, going with their 6-2, are going to have that power in the second half. Rightio, moving on to the English backline, and only one change here, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. At halfback, we've got Mitchell again. Did a good job last week and deserves to be there for sure. I think when Danny Kerr came on, England started to have a few problems, and they were lucky in that respect. But I think that the right combination is Mitchell and Ford for now, and we'll see how that plays out again this weekend. At second 5'8", inside centre, we've got Ollie Lawrence again. I think he played very well last week. He scored a good try. When he shows himself in games like he did last week, he can be an immense player. So I hope we see that style from Ollie Lawrence again this weekend. Outside him, Henry Slade is starting in the back line for England. That left foot boot is also a benefit to England, giving England the opportunity to clear from their line, a little bit like James Lowe does from Ireland. So I think having Slade there is a good starting move as well. And then on the wings for England this weekend, we have Freeman on one wing, and unfortunately we're not going to see Emmanuel Feaye-Basso because he has been ruled out of this game through concussion. And what was really interesting is he self-diagnosed this and put his hand up and said, I'm not going to be okay to go in the weekend. And it takes a big move for a young player who's just starting off his international career to actually say that and to pull himself out of the team. So a bit of kudos to Wabasso for that one. But so in replacing Wabasso on the wing will be Elliot Daly, of course, and he came on as a substitute last weekend, so it's going to be really interesting to see how he starts in this game. I like Daly. He brings a lot of flair and speed to the English backline as long as they get the ball out to him, so we'll see what happens this weekend. And then we've got Furbank at fullback for the English this weekend. Played well last weekend, scored that try, and seems to really have injected himself into this position in the English backline, taking over from Freddie Stewart, of course. To the reserve bench for the backs for England this weekend, there's 3 players on the bench. Danny Care's going to be coming on. He needs to get his kicking under control. It was not good last weekend. He's got to stop giving the ball away in the pivotal moments of this game, and if we're close in the last 10 or 15 minutes of the game and Care is on the ground, he's got to be very, very mindful of his game management and make sure he does the right things. Marcus Smith and Tuolagi are the other substitute backs in this game. We saw what Marcus Smith did last week, winning the game for England in the last seconds, and he can really change a game when he comes on. So it's going to be interesting to see when Steve Borthwick uses him against this French team, and that's all going to depend on what's happening, I think, in the first 50 minutes of the game. And then Tuolagi is back, which is great to see, and we will see him making some destructive runs, I'm sure, when he gets on the field, most likely in the second half. So there we go, that's the England team and their substitutes. A very good team. Unfortunately, Wabasso's not there, out through concussion, self-diagnosed, and he'll be missing this last game of the Six Nations, but I'm sure we're going to see him further on in the season and probably on the tour down under to New Zealand as well. So there we go, that's the 2 teams. Now let's head on over to my prediction for this game. This is a really interesting one for me, and I think it all comes down to who's going to be able to back up from their good performances last week. Of course, England, a fantastic performance to beat Ireland in that game at Twickenham, and France ran all over the top of Wales in the last 20 minutes of that game as well, and I'm expecting France to take a lot of self-belief from that game. I think they needed that kind of 20 minutes of a game where they were really on the roll at the end of the game. They got their substitutes on and it could open up their backline, and we saw a lot of dangerous plays from France, very expansive. But also we have to understand that the Welsh defence fell off a little bit, and I'm not sure whether the English defence are going to do that. So I think the first 50 minutes of this game is going to be critical for England. They need to get on top. They need to keep the scoreboard ticking over. George Ford needs to get penalties, even a couple of drop goals, and they've got to try and score some tries against this French team. Because when we get to that 50-minute mark and their substitutes come on for France, I think the dynamic of this game is going to change. I think France are going to get on top of it. And because France have got more forwards on the bench, they're going to be able to take it to England up front, and it's going to give them the opportunity to get more possession in that last 20 minutes and try and run England ragged. And when I say run England ragged, maybe France are already in the lead and we see a repeat of what they did against Wales and scoring 2 or 3 tries in the last 20 minutes. On the flip side, I think the English defence is better than what France have come up against so far. It's going to be good to see how long they can hang in there for, but I really think England need to come into this game with the mentality of going for 80 minutes, because if they slacken off at all in their defence in that second half, they're going to have a lot of trouble with this French team. The other thing we've got to watch out for in this game, I think, is England's capacity to not make errors. And we saw the big difference of what happened between their game against Scotland and what happened against Ireland. When they reduced the number of errors in their game, they looked a completely different team. So if we see a start off in this game where England are making a lot of unforced errors, then it could tend to lead the game towards France, because France will start to get on top of them. They'll start to make territory from those errors and they'll turn that into points. So England need to be very clinical, very precise with their handling this weekend, and make sure that those passes are sticking and they're going to the man, because we saw what happened against Scotland and it got a little bit ugly there for England. Also, England's general play kicking needs to be on point, and I'm talking about Mitchell, Kerr and George Ford. They need to make sure that they're making territory gains and they're putting the ball into a lot of space. We know how talented these French back three are, and if they get the ball in open space, they can cause all sorts of havoc. And Biel Berry and Damien Penaud are brilliant at scoring tries from very small opportunities that are given to them. So that's something that England's going to need to be very, very conscious of in this game. So my prediction for this game is that if France are leading after 60 minutes of this game, then they're going to win this game, because I think that bench for France can make all the difference, and I don't think England can run them down if England are behind at that point in the game. But if England are within 1 point or they've got a lead coming up to 60 minutes, then I think we could have a very, very close game indeed. And I expect England to get off to a big start here. I think they'll try to do whatever they can to keep the French crowd quiet. And if they're able to do that, then we might see England going to the halftime with a lead. However, on the flip side, if France get off to a good start, they get the crowd into the game and they carry on where they left off against Wales last weekend, then I can see nothing other than a French win, even be it by a narrow margin. So that's how I think it's going to pan out. I think that England are going to miss Wabasso a little bit. I don't think Elliot Daly is that level of player in terms of being able to be so dynamic. But he's one man, and we'll have to wait and see how it goes. I think if Thomas Ramos has another great game this weekend and he's able to get that French backline away, then I think we'll see France growing more and more into this game as it goes on. I think the bench is going to be the critical part of the game. Watch out for those big Taiafanua brothers coming on. Henri Colombier as well, he's a huge man. And also Malvaco, I think we haven't seen the best of him yet in the Six Nations competition. So there we go, that's how I think it's going to fall this weekend. Don't forget to drop me your comments on how you think this one's going to go between France and England. Do you think England are going to miss Wabasso enough to lose this game? Or do you think they're going to be able to back it up in terms of the performance they had against Ireland? And do you think Marcus Smith might play a big role in this game when he comes on? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Okay, don't forget to check out my other preview shows of the other games this weekend. Of course, we've got Wales v Italy at Cardiff on Saturday as well. And we've got that big game in Dublin between Ireland and Scotland. Going to be an absolute cracker, that one as well. I will be back after all of the games this weekend with my review shows of each of the game, talking about the players that stood out for me, but going into details about the 80 minutes and what happened throughout the game, the strategies the coaches used, what worked, what didn't work. So make sure you stick around for that. The best way to do that is hit the subscribe button. And if you like this video, give it a bit of a thumbs up. That helps me out as well here on the channel. I'd love you to be part of our growing global community here on Inside Rugby. So make sure you stick around for lots more on the rugby content coming up in the future. Until then, it's time to say stay well, stay safe everyone. It's time to also say adios from beautiful Mexico. I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.
Helmy Thomas, Edwards to Barry John, Hall, John Dawes, again Williams in the line.